Hey, welcome to another session of Classroom USA. There's several interviews that we do that we're going to do cross-platform, and we are going to have on Street Level America, USA Heartbeat, Classroom USA, because there's certain things we're talking about that we all should be talking about, and one of those is our next guest here on the sessions. We are going to be talking to K. Carl Smith about Frederick Douglass, and specifically about a book that K. Carl Smith has written, Douglass versus Marx, the battle for America's soul. So, K. Carl Smith, hey, welcome to Street Level America and Classroom USA.
Hey, Dave, nice seeing you again. Always great to chat with you. Thanks for
Yeah.
inviting me on your show.
Now, this book is a unique book and one that we really need. We need a truckload of books like this right now, because Americans were at each other's throats. I don't think I've ever seen this nation as divided as we are. And what's alarming to me, I once told a person that when we start seeing socialists on the ballot in the state of Idaho, which is where I'm from, then Houston, we've got a problem here. We've got, and,
Yeah.
and I wonder if the world's greatest generation, veterans who fought in World War II, many of them, thankfully, just hear me out here, are not alive today to see what's going on. We're actually voting in socialism into America, like, for example, in the state of New York. Now, the key of your book here, Douglass versus Marx, The Battle for America's Soul. Why did you write this book?
For the things you just mentioned, to educate um, not just the next generation, because there's some people in our age group who don't know the significance of liberty, why it's important, and they
Mm-hmm.
think socialism is okay if it's exercised by the right people who are smart, and then it doesn't work that way. So I wrote the book to help people understand what is the counter argument to socialism, which is liberty, but through the lens of Frederick Douglass.
Mm-hmm.
So when I take the father of communism and I put him in a ring with America's greatest liberty messenger, Frederick Douglass, who's going to come out the winner? And it's Douglass all the time because while Marx was a theorist about oppression, Douglass had real life experiences about oppression and he articulated them well. So it's all about educating the next generation or people in general. I don't care what generation they're in or what country they're in, that socialism is not cool. And just because you say socialism, that don't mean social media. And so it's really to educate and empower people like yourself who are concerned about the future, but help them become better messengers of liberty by leveraging the liberty message of Frederick Douglass to get the significance, the importance of liberty across to people who really need to hear it.
Really need to hear it. Now, one of the things I think we're fighting here is, and please, if please don't be offended, folks, if you're listening to this and think I'm calling you stupid. But also, we need to talk about ignorance of history. Those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Now, you bring up a good point here. A lot of the young people today, when they hear about socialism, they think, oh, hey, I know sometimes when you do street interviews and you ask people who's the first president of the United States, you get some very interesting answers. One of the questions you can ask people on the street is, what is socialism? Oh, I don't know. Is it like social media? So when I hear answers like that, I know we've got a problem, that we have
Yeah, we're in
failed
trouble.
to we have failed to educate the next generation. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. They need to
Yeah.
learn these lessons before they vote these people into office. We're already seeing problems in New York City with taxes being raised. Oh, we'll just tax the rich. Well, the problem with that is then all the rich people with money will leave, and then who's going to be taxed? And you've got an empty. It's kind of like Escape from New York with Snake Plissken. That movie, I hope, is not prophetic. So
You
let's
know,
go ahead.
that's a concern because civics is not being taught anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
so we gotta find a way to get our young people. We gotta teach them civics outside the classroom, unfortunately, and that's part of what the book does. It really takes the founding fathers' principles and to articulate those principles through the liberty messages of Frederick Douglass. And when you do that, a man who was a former slave talks about his respect for the founding fathers and his admiration for the U.S. Constitution. The left has no answer for it. So we got to put Douglas against Karl Marx to help people understand that liberty and is the best way to go, not control or government control over our lives. I think that contrast comes from Douglas will help people open their eyes up. And what also motivated me to write this book was I came across an interview of Thomas Sowell. I think it was a YouTube interview, and somebody asked him, said, "Well, Mr. Sowell, as a young man growing up, you were a devout Marxist." He said, "Yeah, I was a devout Marxist." He said, "What happened?" Well, he said, "I finally heard the counter argument." Well, by writing this book, we're giving people the counter argument to socialism, to Marxism, but it's through the lens of Frederick Douglass.
How do we reach the next generation? Now, your book is a good first step. How other ways can we reach these people on the street who, quite frankly, don't have a clue, to get them a clue before it's too late?
I think one of the most effective ways to reach the next generation is to get liberty-minded parents and grandparents to have conversations with their children and not confrontations. I think that's a start. You have to start locally. You got to start at your Thanksgiving dinner table. You got to talk to your child. You got to talk to your grandchildren because they're not going to get it in school. They're not going to get the importance of living through our social institutions because those institutions have been taken over by socialists or the left. So I think the conservative parents and grandparents is the last line of defense when it comes to saving America and educating the next generation about the importance of liberty.
I think the midterm elections and the next general election are going to be uh, principal and key to the future of America. The next election, we're going to decide whether we're going to be a socialist nation, where we're going to
Yeah,
have wide open borders, and whether we're going to have a constitution that bears some resemblance to what we have right now.
yeah,
One of the things I love about using the teachings of Frederick Douglass is there's some conflict that's occurring in America: socialism versus the free enterprise system, the race question, uh, uh, what Caucasians, white people versus persons of color. And when some people say, well, if you're a flag loving American like me, you're just an angry old white man. No, no, we're not. We're brothers from another mother. We believe in freedom. We believe in the teachings of Frederick Douglass, and having a man of color take a strong position who did experience oppression in slavery, saying this is the best way to go, the free
yeah.
enterprise system in America today. And do you have an add on to that?
Yeah, I just want to say that to your listening audience that even though Frederick Douglass and Karl Marx, well, first of all, they were both born in 1818, but they never met. Karl Marx was from Germany. Frederick Douglass, of course, Maryland, in the upstate in Maryland. They never met. So the book is fictional from that standpoint. They never met. But that's where the fiction starts because the content of their debates is based on what they wrote, what they said. It's based on Das Kapital, the Communist Manifesto, the things that Marx talked about in his speeches and in his writings, and it's based on the writings of Douglas. So the content of what they're saying in their debates is based on their beliefs. It's not something we made up, and that's out there to put together. And so that's the power of it. I mean, the things you just mentioned, uh, race, equity versus equality, all that is being debated. That's because in the book it's 31 debates. That's one of them. They're debating the Constitution. Is it a pro-slavery document? Were the founding fathers racist? They're debating that. Private property rights, which is a big claim of Karl Marx to get rid of private property. They're debating that. Of course, Douglas wears them out. They're debating where our rights come from, God or from the government. We know what socialists believe. They believe the government gives us our rights or granted our rights. Douglas, of course, didn't believe that. He believed in God given rights. And considering Douglas was an ordained preacher as well. So all the claims of Marxism are being addressed in these 31 debates. And I don't have to tell you this, you just know because Douglas had logic in his thinking. He had the morally the right position, and he had real life experiences. Those three alone gave him the position to win every single argument against that Karl Marx brought up. And one of the debates we wrote, where Frederick Douglass confronts Karl Marx regarding his lack of worth ethic in taking care of his family, instead of relying on Engels and his rich uncle. And the quote we came up with, that it's a one-liner. Douglass said, I'm paraphrasing, he said, a man that does not fulfill his obligation to take care of his family should not try to lead a nation.
I like
And
that
so,
point.
yeah, so it's an enlightening book. I have 8 grandchildren who are middle school up to high school. They're being homeschooled. They had to read it, and they came back to me and said, Paul, we love this book. I said, why? It's a debate going back and forth, but it's like that you're there listening to the debate. It's like it's real time. And of course, they're learning things as they go about the value of liberty, but also how they can defend and articulate what they believe in against the attacks of socialists and the left.
Is this book available now? Can people buy it now?
Yes, they can. It's on Amazon, uh, Douglas versus Marx. But I encourage you, come to my site, and that's fdrstore.company.site. And that way you get an autographed copy. And while we're trying to make Bezos more of a millionaire than he is, right?
There you go. Give me that site again.
So F Frank Delta Romeo FDR store dot company dot site SITE.
Okay. Let's talk about private property rights. One of the things we're hearing in New York City right now is the Mandami's head of rentals, or whatever you want to call her, head of housing, saying in a past interview that we need to get rid of private property rights and the government needs to own everything. The current generation, to some
That's
extent,
Marxism right there, man. Karl Marx said that.
yeah.
Well, go ahead.
Okay. So, but we have to, I don't want to say dumb it down, but we have to take the least common denominator and really, really make an argument here. So we already have, and it's just, I'm embarrassed. I'm aghast that we're having this conversation in America today. But there are some people, young people, that might say, yeah, I don't have a problem with the government owning all the property because they can control the rents, because I just want to go to the game. I just want to buy my video games, and I just want life to go on. What they don't realize is that they're trading away their future, because and I'm kind of answering your question, but I want you to, as soon as I get done making my speech here,
No, you're doing a great job. I don't know if I can add to it. Go ahead.
Okay. So you're trading away your future for hey, well, you might have lower rents, but they have the ownership of your property. And when the government takes the guns, when the government takes the property, you have no rights. You have no property. You have no rights. Let's talk about private property.
Yeah. Private property, and a lot of people, when you say private property, they just think of land. Well, private property is more than just land. That's your labor. That's the money you receive for the work you do. That's private property. Anything you can do with your hands, that your hands help developing your skill with your mind, that's private property. It's not just land. So by confiscating my wealth that I generate, my money that I generate through my labor, if you want to control that, that's what a lot of people need to understand. It don't just mean land. Anything that you touch with your hand, you develop, that's private property. And so that's one of the debates that Douglas wears him out. Douglas said private property gives a man dignity. You want to take that away. Private property gives a man dignity. And that's when Doug gets on him about, look, you didn't take care of your family. So why? So what they're doing is they're trading one form of oppression for another through disguise. And Douglas lays them out on that. So what we did with these 31 debates, my brother and I, we had to role play all this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was actually Frederick Douglass because I'm well schooled on Frederick Douglass. But then we had to go both and read everything that Karl Marx wrote and what was written about him to really understand when we put these dialogues together, this debate together, we were factual based on what they said and they believed. So when Karl Marx talked about that religion is the opiate of the masses, meaning that what religion is, it keeps you docile. Where you don't fight oppression while you're here on earth. You want to wait till you get to heaven. So Karl Marx had a problem with religion, and Douglas said religion gave me my inspiration to fight, that kind of thing, and we laid that all out. We're excited about it because it's really the answer to the missing piece to the puzzle. How do we inform and ignite and sometimes reignite people's passion for liberty by sharing the liberty messages of Frederick Douglass
And
in contrast to Karl Marx?
thank you for writing this book. One of the things you also touched on was the work ethic. We need to
Oh,
reestablish
yeah.
the work ethic in America today. America, our industrial might won World War II. America, this is not just a race question. And I think a lot of people are building up the might and power of America as being an oppressor versus oppressed issue. We got this way on the backs of slaves and so on and so forth. But we got Frederick Douglass saying, hey, this is the land of opportunity. And if you don't work, your family should not eat. We need to have America as a strong economic force in the world today, because there are countries out there, China, for one, that want to, if they control the world's economy, then we will become socialist communist and you will have no rights. So
That's right.
this is not a race question. This is a freedom question. And we all need to get on the same page and realize this. And I love the format of your book and the debate versus debate, because we need to give our young people answers to questions when they meet people on the street who say, hey, socialism is like social media. No, it's not. It's worlds different.
Yeah.
And you have to
I
argue
think,
for it. You have to defend it.
yeah, some of the most powerful aspects of the book. So you have 31 debates.
Mm-hmm.
Each debate is followed by a reflection. Then it's followed by talking points that you can use to help you better articulate and defend your view if it's in line with Frederick Douglass. And also there are discussion questions to get you to think. And then also I provided answers to those questions based on my point of view. So we wrote the book not to teach somebody something, but we want them to learn something. And that's the key. And
and to make them think.
You mentioned about I want to say something about the word work. Douglas says success can be described in one word: work, 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 and work.
America has become the juggernaut that it is, and we are the bastion, Lady Liberty in the harbor. We are the defender of liberty, and it's for all races. Everyone has a place at the table in America today, and we all need to work. Hey, I totally agree with Frederick Douglass. You don't work, your family doesn't eat. So get out there and work. We need to keep
That's
America.
a biblical concept.
Mm-hmm.
That's a biblical concept.
Is the U.S. Constitution, this is one of the questions, one of the debates in the 31 that you do in the book, is the U.S. Constitution a pro-slavery document? Some people argue that.
Yeah, Douglas, at first when Douglas escaped from slavery, he actually believed that because he believed what he was told by William Lloyd Garrison. But Douglas did something interesting. He went back and read the Constitution. He read Lysander Spooner's Unconstitutionality of Slavery. He read the Federalist Papers, and he came back and said, wait a minute, the Constitution is not a pro-slavery document. The word slavery is not even in the Constitution. So Douglas had an epiphany, if you will. He had a turnabout, and he started advocating that and started speaking that the Constitution is a glorious liberty document, anti-slavery. And so Douglas and Marx are arguing that back and forth because Marx's position was, he said, a Constitution was written by white men to protect their interests. How can you trust and value a Constitution that with that kind of positioning of start? And Douglas talked about the deed of saying all people are created equal is more important than the person who wrote it. So he's telling Karl Marx, don't focus on the men. Men are men are fallible, infallible. You focus on the deed. They wrote a book that says we the people, not we the white people. That's the deed. And Douglas breaks that down.
I love this book. Well, I would get a copy of it. Folks, you need to get a copy of this book because we need to really understand and can argue uh, at the dinner table, at the workplace, when this conversation comes up, because it will come up. And
It will. Yeah.
we have to defend it. We have to be able to make an argument for ourselves so we know how to vote. We know that we're voting for somebody other than just a personality. We are voting for a constitutionally guaranteed freedom because we lose our freedom by inches. And as we just continually, oh, we'll let this election go, we'll let the New York election go, we'll have a mayor here and a mayor there that are socialist, and before long half of America is socialist, and then we're fighting for our constitution.
I believe that we can actually save America in one or two election cycles if we leverage the liberty message of Frederick Douglass. You have to put Douglass in the ring to fight and duke it out with Karl Marx, not some politician in Washington, D.C. To me, Frederick Douglass is the only American who can defeat Marxism because Douglass brings something to the table nobody else brings to the table. He's a former slave. Speaking of his admiration for the founding fathers, the importance of liberty, and his respect for the U.S. Constitution, and having that real life experience as a slave, that carries a lot of weight because how can you win? Well, how can you win? To me, it is impossible to win an argument with a person who was a former slave about their respect for the Constitution and the founding fathers and the value of liberty.
Another argument you bring up about the slavery question: does the 3/5 clause really mean that black people are only 3/5 of a person?
You know, I'm a graduate of Alabama A&M University, a historical black college. I was taught in college, and it's still being taught today in many colleges, not just black colleges, that the 3/5 clause meaning that the blacks are 3/5 of a human being. And Douglas was taught that. This has been going on for a long time. But 1860, and of course, Douglas and Karl Marx, they're debating this in the book. Douglas said in 1860, that's not the truth. The 3/5 clause has nothing to do with the personhood of a black individual. It was a approach used by the free states to get the Constitution ratified. So basically, what Douglas said was what the 3/5 clause is all about, and that was my awakening moment. It was allowing, uh, making room for the Constitution to be ratified, but telling the free states, look, if you free them, the slaves, we'll let you count them as one person, one vote. But since you can't free them, and we don't want you to have great numbers in Congress, we'll let you count the slave population as one person. I mean, as slave population. So in a slave state, one black vote is only 3/5 of a vote, but in the free state, one black person worth a whole vote. So it limits the congressional representation of the slave states in Congress with the 3/5 clause. Douglas said it didn't end slavery, but it put us on the right track to end slavery.
And I like that track. If you look at the history of George Washington, now they obviously one of the arguments that those people there's a contingent out there that are trying to fight the Civil War again in America over the slave question. George Washington did own slaves, but in his will, at his death, he said all slaves should be free. That's the founding father of America. And I think, and as you go to Mount Vernon and really delve into the George Washington question, I'm kind of getting into another theme of questioning here. But
Yeah,
George Washington, I think, as he looked at the slavery issue, he realized that this is wrong, and these are people, and we need to treat them as such. He understood the political reality of the day, and I don't want to get too far down this rabbit trail, but he freed all the slaves on his death from the
yeah,
Mount
yeah.
Vernon plantation.
That's a very good point because there's a debate in the book. It's entitled God uses God used imperfect men to write noble documents. And
Mm-hmm.
Douglas breaks that down in his debate with Karl Marx and basically said, look, the founding fathers were imperfect. Some of them owned slaves. He said Moses was imperfect. Moses killed the man, but God inspired him to write the first 5 books of the Old Testament. The Apostle Paul was imperfect.
Mm-hmm.
He persecuted the Christians, but God inspired him to write the majority of the New Testament. The founding fathers, some of them were imperfect, but they wrote a document that says we the people, not we the white people. So God uses imperfect people to write noble documents, and the founding fathers included in that.
The Apostle Paul also approved, he applauded the death of the first martyr, Stephen, in the book of Acts. So,
That's right.
you
Yes, he
know,
has some issues.
yeah. And so back in the day, there were some issues. It bothers me. We shouldn't have to refight the Civil War again. Thousands of people died to end slavery in the United States of America. It's over. We're all one in the sight of God. It's we the people, as you mentioned before, um, in order to form a more perfect union. We the people, that's all persons of all colors, all ethnicities. But we need to adopt. Another thing that bothers me in America today is we have pockets where different forms of government, like Sharia law, are being
Yeah,
allowed
big
to
time.
form in like in Minnesota and some places in Texas. I think Austin. There are some contingents, almost like
Big time in Dearborn, Michigan.
yeah, uh,
Dearborn, Michigan, big. My
neighborhood.
problem with
Go
that,
ahead.
who's allowing that? What politicians are allowing that to happen? What judge is allowing this to happen? That can't happen unless we okay it. Somebody's in position. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but somebody's saying it's okay. But that's the problem. Who is not protecting us? That we have an office as a representative to protect us. It's not doing their job. I
It
don't
should
know.
be it should be the we the people, and one of the things that we ask people to do is get a copy of the United States Constitution. The Cato Institute has this book, and I carry it with me. I always have a copy. In fact, I've worn out 3 copies so far. The Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. Know what this document says. Frederick Douglass believed in it. You believe in it. I believe in it.
Yeah.
This is not a perfect country. This is not a perfect document. But of all the forms of government on the planet today, I think this is the best course.
Yeah. Why are people risking their life and their children's life to come to this country? People not leaving in the numbers of people compared to people coming to this country, and they're fleeing from what? Most of them are fleeing from socialist Marxist regimes to begin with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, we got some work to do. I think that I think Doug is well. I know Doug is the answer to save America. He's America's greatest liberty messenger, and we have not leveraged him to the point where we treat Doug as if he's a philosopher of liberty. We don't treat him that way. They look at Karl Marx as more of a philosopher. Well, Douglas was a philosopher too. He didn't just write 3 autobiographies. He wrote endlessly. I mean, he had a newsletter. He was an advisor to 5 U.S. presidents. He was homeschooled, by the way. It's all home, no form of schooling. This man, and I study him so much. I read him so much because this man was put on this earth for a time like this for us to go back and lean toward and get some liberty inspiration, how to fight tyranny like he fought slavery. Marxism just another form of slavery, same techniques. And Douglas gives us the answer how to win and end slavery, how we can win and defeat Marxism and socialism.
I love this book, and I love the premise, and I love what you just said. Is we need to use Frederick Douglass more than we have for a couple of reasons. We need to deal with the race issue, and we need to deal with the communist versus socialism issue, and we can combine both in the person and the teachings of Frederick Douglass.
That's right. And all those things you just said, there are debates in the book covering those things. Matter of fact, there's one debate we just call it DEI in America, and they're debating that. And of course, and I'm not going to reveal all of it. I
Okay.
just whet your appetite with it.
I like that. Folks, you want to go out and get a copy of the book, right? Because again, I'm restating something here that should be obvious. We're going to restate it again. We as Americans need to be able to make an argument in our own mind as we go to the polls to know where we stand and why we stand in that position. And we also need to make an argument at the water cooler, at the dinner table, in the classrooms. When you've seen movies where a professor stands up and says things like "No God," and the students have to
That's right.
fight that
That's right.
in the higher education in our colleges and
That's right.
universities. And
That's
there's a
why.
go ahead.
That's why, Dave. That's why every debate has a series of talking points to equip ourselves, to equip our college students, to better articulate what they believe in and defend it. I don't care if it's with a professor, with a colleague, or a classmate. That's why the talking points are there. That's what we have to have become a better to articulate the importance of liberty in the U.S. Constitution, and to articulate why socialism is not cool. It is in fact evil. It has never worked wherever it has been implemented. Has never worked. It causes misery and murders. So why are we going to experiment now? No. Read Douglas. Douglas breaks it down.
I would go so far as to say, if you're not homeschooling your kids, start, or at least have kind of a constitution class at your home. Say, hey, Jimmy and Susie, we're going to sit down and we're going to talk. You've seen this stuff in the news. I just bought a book of Douglas versus Marx, and we're going to talk about this after dinner tonight. And to have
True
this
story,
ongoing.
Dave. True story. I got a text last night from a young man who bought the book a week ago. He texted me last night. He said, "K. Carl, my mother loves the book. She's in my daughter's room now, reading to her some of uh, some of the debates. I think he was like a 6 year old. His daughter's in sixth grade.
Go ahead.
So, and his grandmother, his mother's in the room with her grandchild, reading to her some of the debates between Douglas and Karl Marx. And the young girl was so inspired by it, she's taken the book to school today to give to the teacher and ask the teacher to read some of the dialogues. Now, here's the thing: the
Good.
book is totally non-political. There's nothing about Democrat Party, Republican Party. It's all about Douglas philosophy versus Karl Marx philosophy. What school system is going to say we don't want that book? If they do say it, we're going to come back and say, why? What problem do you have with Frederick Douglass? We're not talking about any political organization or political party. We're talking about what Karl Marx believed in, what Douglas believed in, and they're discussing it among each other.
Right. And another point, we've made this before, we'll make it again. Carl Douglas was a former slave. So he was a party of the oppressed class. So let's hear his viewpoints.
You got it.
That gives him a lot more validity and credibility and should
That's
bring
right.
center stage. And that's another way to fight this argument about the oppressor, oppressed, white versus black, communist versus socialism. I love, in fact, when we were restarting Classroom USA, we were going to have this interview because, especially today, because we need to deal with these two issues that have become
That's
real
right.
divisive. One of the things that I talk about is the Grand Canyon in America. It's the between conservatives versus liberals, and this Grand Canyon is getting wider every day. And as we see more socialist mayors, New York and other cities being elected, we've got to confront this issue head on. The schools haven't done it. We as parents need to do it. Buy the book for the reasons we mentioned. Read the book. Go through the work sessions at the end of the book, and really think about it and talk about it with your kids. We have got to do this. Not only do we have to vote to save America, we have to understand this is like a race, like a relay race where you hand the baton to the next runner. If we don't hand this Constitution to the next runner of the race, which is our kids, we're going to lose America.
Yeah, yeah. And what kind of life will they have? I don't want to think about it because it's not going to be nice. It's not going to be nice. What kind of if we hand our kids a country where liberty is not priority and socialism is the talk of the day and socialist policies are the talk of the day that brings about misery and poverty, we got to do better than that. And that's what it's all about.
Parents, do this. Go to the internet, do a Google search for Tiananmen Square. Look at the sole person in front of a tank. Do you want your great grandchild to be that person having to stand off a tank? That is what socialism, that is what communism does. Uh, it's a wake up moment. It should be a clarion call or a wake up call, a Nehemiah call to America today. Buy the book. It's called Douglas versus Marx: The Battle for America's Soul. Read it. Uh, share it with your kids. Anything, okay, Carl? We
You won't regret it. You won't regret it because it's gonna help. One thing it's gonna do, Dave, it's gonna bring a lot of political healing to a lot of families. Because you got some families now where their child and their grandchild went off to college, they come back home now. Now they're little socialists, and the parents and grandparents have no idea how to engage them. Well, the best way how to engage them by you equipping yourself with the liberty messages of Frederick Douglass to articulate what you believe in through Douglass to that person that you're engaging. That's the key.
Some of the other books
Because you
are.
said before, Dave,
Go
you
ahead.
can't out victimize a runaway slave, right?
Right. Good point. You've written some other books here. Some of the other books, Telling Conservatives the Truth. I like the title.
That was all about conservatives have a messaging problem, right? And
Okay.
so, in order to become better messengers of liberty, we actually laid out an engagement strategy called the Frederick Douglass Republican Engagement Strategy to empower and equip conservatives how to have conversations with people and not confrontations, and how to trump the race card so people listen to you. And so, quick teaching point. What we
Sure.
teach basically is this: we teach to not call yourself a conservative. We don't say stop being one, but understand that word has been demonized by the left.
Right.
And when you tell somebody you're a conservative, you just basically admitted that you're a racist and an Uncle Tom, and therefore people are not going to agree with you. They're not even going to listen to you. So in lieu of saying I'm a conservative, I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican, and then understand what that phrase means and have the content to come behind that phrase, and that's how you win the narrative, and that's how you change hearts and minds.
Which we definitely need to do. Another title of a book I was reading here that I absolutely love: Unchained Ascent: How the Success Strategies of Frederick Douglass Lead to Great Prosperity. There's a lot in that title there,
Yeah,
and I think it paints a picture.
yeah, yeah. I wrote that book about 2 years ago, but I never published it until the end of last year. So what Douglas's favorite speech was a speech called "Self-Made Men," and in that speech, he laid out his action plan for success. A lot of people don't know Douglas was an advisor to 5 U.S. presidents. He had $300,000 in his savings at the time of his death, which is over $10 million today. So, how did Douglas rise from being born below poverty, slavery, to become a one percenter and advisor to 5 presidents? So, in his lecture, Self Made Men, he lays out his success strategy. I read the lecture and I made his success strategy more contemporary for today in terms of a self-development book or self-improvement book. That's what it is.
So as we drill down and we get ready to kind of sew a button on it and get ready to end the interview, socialism, a way for the government to have all the wealth. Capitalism, and what we have in America, is a way for the people, we the people, to have the wealth, have the property. It's our government. We cannot just hand it over to the government and allow them to give us a place to live and an allowance. Uh, when you
Yeah.
when you destroy the work ethic, which is what socialism does, then you detooth, you take away the ability of America to become the industrial juggernaut that it is in the world today, and you give an opening to countries like China and Russia to take in. We cannot. I was watching an interview the other day. It was a movie that has been put out by Focus on the Family, titled Truth Rising, and it says one of the persons, and I believe it was a woman who escaped from the Middle East persecution. She was a woman, and Iran, Iraq, I can't remember which country, but she escaped from an arranged marriage. And she said, today, the West has built this huge capitalist society built on wealth, and we produce the wealth for ourselves. But we have dropped the ball today at the most dangerous time in the history of the world. And I totally agree with that.
Yeah, yeah. Um, you mentioned capitalism versus communism.
Right.
There is a debate in the book because the capitalism is a Karl Marx invented word. He coined that word. So in the debate, Karl Marx and Frederick Douglass are talking. Douglass starts off by saying, well, he said, Karl, let me say this. I will not use your word capitalism because that's the word you coin with your friends because it takes away, you're demeaning the free market system by calling it capitalism because in the free market system, I have the will to be participate or not. That doesn't come across in the word capitalism that you describe. So they go through this debate about that. And of course, Douglas believed in capitalism. He believed in a free market system. He wrote 3 autobiographies. One of them was a bestseller. He had a newsletter people subscribed to. So Douglas died with what, $300,000 in savings. Douglas believed in the free market system.
So we don't call it capitalism. What do we call it? Free market
Free
system?
market system. Free market. Free market system.
Closing thoughts.
Don't sit this out. This is the perfect time to be alive in America where we can, our generation, parents, grandparents, we can become legends by passing the message of liberty to our children and grandchildren, make sure they understand it because they're not teaching it in school, and especially the public schools. They're not getting it. And most of our children are in the public school system. So it falls on us as parents and grandparents to become better messengers of liberty and learn how to share that message with our children and grandchildren so they can become defenders of liberty and pass it on. And what did Reagan say? Liberty is not passed through the bloodstream. You got to fight for it. Every generation got to fight for it. So that's what we have to do. We're part of that now.
Amen.
And the left is coming out with everything.
The book is called Douglas versus Marx. Douglas is spelled with 2 S's, Douglass versus Marx.
Right.
The Battle for America's Soul. The website or how they get a copy of it?
FDR Store. FDR Store .company .site SITE.
Get a copy of the book. You won't regret it. It's all about saving America. We need to work together. We need to know what we believe in, why we believe in it, and need to be able to argue that point in ourselves.
You got it, Dave.
The other people. We gotta. This is an important fight here, and yeah, I'll use the F word. It's a fight. We have to save America for the next generation. It's up to us. Yeah. We literally. It's often been said that this is the most important election, but I believe seriously, the midterms and the next general election is the most important election that will decide the fate of America.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're right, because now we have a favorable president in office. In other words, he understands liberty and the U.S. Constitution. He values both. Well, there's no guarantee that Trump cannot succeed himself.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So we got 2 years to get this thing together. Get out there, get the book, and let's be part of this movement. This is not a gimmick. This is not some magician's trick. It's not some thought that sprang forth from the head of a philosophical Zeus. This is I received this through divine providence, and I'm just sharing it with the nation.
One more thought I want to add is something you just said earlier about imperfect men create noble documents. And there's a reason I'm bringing this up. There are certain people out there that hate Trump, and I don't think hate is a strong enough word for it. If he said today was Wednesday, which is the day we're recording this, they would find out some other way to find the day. But you have to look at the policies, and you have to look at what he's doing. We need people in the White House who know how to operate businesses. Do I believe with everything Donald Trump has done or said? No. But personally, just speaking out loud here, I like the policies that he's done. Imperfect men. God can use imperfect men. Write that down, put it on the fridge. God can use imperfect men. So if you think Donald Trump is imperfect and God can't use him, hey, he's using us. He used Frederick Douglass. He used George Washington. They were not perfect. None of us are perfect. God.
That's right.
But we have to fight for the principles of the Constitution. We, the people of the United States of America, in order to form a more perfect union, ensure justice, provide for the common defense. You know it, and we can't lose it. K. Carl Smith, thank you for being with us today on Classroom USA, Street Level America, USA Heartbeat. Look forward to talking with you again. Look forward to seeing increased sales of this book for the reason I mentioned.
Well, thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. And once again, it's always a great time to be part of to be in the classroom with you.
Okay. God bless. We'll do this again.
Okay, buddy. Out here.